Welcome to the Metals 100 coverage for the PDAC 2025 here in Toronto. I'm very glad to have Mr. Jeffrey Christian here with me to have a brief talk. How are you doing, Jeffrey?
Very good. Thank you for having me back.
Yes, maybe I'll start off to touch upon some topics that we have discussed last year to sort of just refresh the audience memory. One of the key things we talk about is the central bank buying of gold.
Yes.
And you talk saying that you predict about 10 to 12 million ounces of gold sort of net purchase probably for last year. Is this sort of what happened near the end? Or?
Not actually, yeah. I mean, central banks actually bought about half as much gold in ounce terms last year as they had in 2023.
Yeah.
And to understand that, there are three things that went on. The first thing is that central banks buy gold not thinking about ounces but dollars. What percentage of my reserves do I want in gold? And to do that, gold prices were 20% higher last year than they had been in 2023. They bought the same value of gold, but it was fewer ounces because the gold prices were.
Yeah, got it.
Second thing was that a lot of central banks were looking at much weaker currencies and much weaker economic environments, and they were preoccupied with much more important things than modifying their monetary reserves with gold. And the third thing was that the total was distorted by heavy sales by Russia. And if you take Russia out, you actually had higher central banks. But Russia's been using its gold reserves to finance the war effort and its domestic government. So that has lowered the total.
Okay. We also talk a bit about the geopolitical tensions around the world, how it's affecting the market. It's still a major factor, I believe. And this may sound rhetorical, but I still have to ask this. So we have a new U.S. president since last time we talked. Is it becoming more geopolitical sort of tension affecting the markets since he's there?
Yeah, I think that the new government in the United States, look, worldwide, the level of investor and financial market and personal individual people's anxiety and uncertainty and nervousness about where the world's going and where their countries are going and where their local and their personal financial standing is, that's the highest level of anxiety since December 1941. People are more nervous now than they were a year ago, and for the last 80 years, 85 years, 84 years. And so they've been buying more gold and silver and dollars, right? And that has gone on. And the new U.S. administration has worsened those situations.
And of course, we know gold had a good one last year. Silver also had a good one last year too. I think it's up around 21%. What do you think silver will do this year?
We're looking for about another 20% increase in silver prices and a big increase in gold prices too. Now, part of that is because the prices rose in the fourth quarter of last year, partly around the time of the U.S. election. So you're starting at a higher base. Gold started 2024 at like $2,100. It started this year at $2,660. So it's starting at a higher base. But we expect it to rise further. And silver too.
And of course, we cannot talk about the whole world's economy these days, without the term tariff. So is this going to be a major factor affecting in the next few years at least?
Absolutely. I mean, tariffs are terrible. They raise inflation around the world, and they lower real growth. So you have a much greater chance of a deeper recession sooner as a result of tariffs being imposed, and you have a much greater chance of higher inflation. How governments fiscally respond to that and how monetary authorities respond to all of that is a big question. But you can say that the tariffs are going to significantly reduce economic growth and raise the cost of doing everything. So that's bad for the world. It's good for gold and silver.
Too. And another thing I found really interesting recently in the headline is about Fort Knox. It's the Trump administration is trying to say and we're going to do a full audit on the gold reserves to make sure that we have that amount of gold there. Do you believe it's just something that is really significant at all, that is a measure to just try to balance a bit for the deficit of the country, or is it nothing burger?
I think the Trump administration is trying to scare people and they're trying to make people suspicious of some secret government plot to destroy America. And anything that they can say that helps push that suspicion and increase it, they're doing. And that's what they're doing with the Fort Knox. The reality is that Fort Knox, the U.S. Treasury had an independent audit, bar by bar, 2000 to 2008. It took about 8 or 9 years to do, millions of dollars to do it. They took each bar, they weighed it, they inspected it, they took spot assays, the representative sample, sent those to a independent assay lab. They checked the bars against the bar list that they had from 1971, and they found that everything was there. Then they resealed things. And you have to understand, the way the Treasury manages its deep storage gold is they put the bars in drums, they seal the drums, there's a seal that's signed. And if that seal is broken and signature is broken, you know that drum's been opened. If it hasn't been broken, you know that it hasn't been opened. They put those drums in individual vaults at Fort Knox and at West Point and at other depositories. Then they seal those vaults and they put a signature on that. And if the signatures haven't been broken, if the seals haven't been broken, no one's been in that vault, no one's been in that drum. So the gold's there. And the whole thing with Trump and Musk is just aimed at scaring people and raising the suspicion and distrust of the U.S. government.
That's
it has nothing to do with gold.
Good insight there. My final question for you here, because we talk about gold and silver all the time these few years, seems like gold and silver is now to risen to a level that it is becoming more relevant to an average investor into investing gold and silver now compared to, let's say, 5-10 years ago?
Let me just say one more thing about Fort Knox.
Yeah.
We have a list. It's not just Fort Knox. It's a gold spread through several depositories. We have the bar list, and we have the assay results.
Yeah.
And if somebody really wants them, we'll make it free. I mean, we got it from Ron Paul's hearing. In 2011. And Ron Paul was a big skeptic, and when he had the hearing, he said, I found out that they've audited this stuff, and they have another less thorough audit every year by KPMG. So in terms of gold and silver's relevance, yes, we are seeing, and we are 25 years into a golden renaissance in which the world is a much more treacherous place, politically and economically. And more people are saying, I should have part of my wealth in gold and silver to protect myself and my family on a long-term basis against that. And we're a quarter of a century into what probably is going to be a half century, if we're lucky, of that kind of period of increased concerns about the instability of the world.
Okay. Thank you for your time here with us today. Thank you for sharing your insights.